Hey guys, this is Levi Evans from the NSL Podcast. I'm actually coming to you guys today from my own classroom. So, this is the first time I've been in my classroom this year, this summer, I should say, and kind of trying to get back into it, get things ready. I've really felt like this summer has been more about getting my mindset ready for the school year than getting my actual stuff ready. I mean, I know I will, but I just keep wanting to get myself ready to really do the best job I can in the classroom. So, actually, I came here to get some work today done, and I ended up finishing up the book I was reading, and that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about. So, I just finished up the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's actually my second read through. It's an awesome book. If you haven't read it, you should totally check it out. And really, the idea behind it is that talent takes a back seat to hard work and effort. So, that hard work and effort are the biggest indicators of achievement. And I really think that's a powerful thought for us in the schools. So in this video, I'm going to kind of take you through what grit is, what it can be used for, and then I kind of want to talk about, okay, now that we know it's powerful in the schools, how do we build grit? How do we get it built in ourselves? And also, how do we build it in students? And then finally, I want to talk about how I think we're using grit in the wrong way. A lot of times as we try to build that culture of grit, we're forgetting a big important step to building that culture. So that's what we're going to go over today. Remember, Angela Duckworth, Grit, read it if you haven't. So grit basically comes down to two things. It comes down to passion and perseverance. Now, passion is something grown naturally. It starts as an interest, and it just keeps growing and growing over time, and you never quit wanting to get better at it or learning about it. Perseverance is that no quit attitude, the I'm going to finish whatever I start, I'm going to continually work until I get better at something, and really that hard work and that work ethic comes in there. And really, as I look at it, grit comes into also matching up those two things with a goal hierarchy, with your desired goal, your measured goal, what you want, and putting all those together to keep working, to continually getting better. So when you put all those together, you have that grit, and that's been proven many times. It's proven a lot during the book to start showing these studies that are saying, hey, a better indicator of success isn't talent, it isn't IQ, it's this grit. It's someone who is willing to finish whatever they start. So knowing that in the schools, I think that's really effective for us to think, hey, if this is something that's saying, if we get our students to work harder, if we get our students to have that passion about what they're doing and to set those goals, we're going to get much more achievement than we've had before. So I think that's why it's taking hold with the schools, and it should be, because it's a great way for us to think as teachers. Well, if grit is important then, and an indicator of success, how do we grow it? Is it something we're just naturally born with, or can we grow it and can it become something bigger? Angela Duckworth's argument is that we can grow grit. So then how? There basically is two ways to grow grit. One is from the inside out and the other from the outside in. I'm going to talk about the inside out first. First, if you're going to grow grit in yourself, you need to have an interest in something, whatever you're trying to get better at. And then the second most important one is purposeful practice. Now, she had a great story in her book about how she runs every day, but she's not getting faster. So she's practicing this thing every day, but she's not getting better at running. Why is that? Well, it comes down, she says, to not setting goals for herself. How is she trying to get faster? Is she trying to get a faster mile time, or is she trying to get a faster 5-mile time? There's a big difference between those two. If she's trying to get a faster 1-mile time, is she timing herself? Is she seeing how much better she's getting on each run? Is she trying to figure out different strategies to get better and reflecting on her running? And I think about that as a teacher a lot. What does purposeful practice look like as an educator? Well, if I, as a third grade teacher, just come in and do my job and don't plan, I don't do formative assessments, I don't reflect on how my teaching is going and how the learning is happening, then am I going to get better as a teacher? And my argument would be not really. You're having those experiences, but you're not reflecting on them and you're not thinking about what you need to do to get better. So from the inside out, you need to think, whatever you're wanting to build grit, how do I find purposeful practice to build grit in myself? So how do we build grit now from the outside in? How do we as educators help our students and help other people start building that grit within themselves? It comes down to about 3 important things. I think the first one is to model grit constantly. If we're modeling grit for students, they start to see that grit, they start to see how important it is for the teacher to have grit, and they start to have those same characteristics themselves. There's a lot of research showing that a student will follow that model from the teacher in a lot of things, especially with mindset. And grit really is a mindset. I kind of see it going along with growth mindset. To have a growth mindset, you have to have the grit. So if you're teaching growth mindset, it's a good way to connect grit with that. And I think that's how you get it from the outside in as you're teaching growth mindset. And another way to really build up grit in our students is to be the right kind of teacher. Now, there's kind of two different sides of teachers or parents that Angela Duckworth talks about, and that's to be very supportive or to be very demanding. And you think, well, which one builds grit? And it's both. You have to be very supportive. You have to have that relationship built with whoever you're trying to build the grit within. But then you also have to have high expectations for that person. So as I think of it with the student, it's where you're supporting a student, you're letting them know that you're going to be there for them, that you're working with them, you're working through them, but that you're also making sure they know, hey, you're going to have to finish this yourself. I'm going to be here, but I'm going to be here to support you, but you're going to finish it. You're going to get the work done. You're going to do it yourself. When you get both of those working together, you really can see a positive increase in achievement. And I know sometimes as teachers, we like to think you have to be one or the other. You have to be a very supportive teacher, or you have to be a very demanding, high expectations teacher. And the idea here is to build this grit, you have to have both. So we need to think about ways that we can create those positive relationships while also having those high expectations for students. Then finally, the third way to build grit from the outside in is to have a culture of grit. And this is kind of like modeling. You could probably put it with it. But that culture of grit is where everywhere the student looks or the person looks, they are seeing people who have that grit themselves. Whether it be they walk into a school as a new staff member or as a new student. Every teacher they look at, every student they look at, every janitor or administrator that they look at is showing this grit and has this desire to keep improving, to keep getting better, and this no-quit attitude and this passion for what they do. When a student sees that, it's infectious. They're going to want to be a part of that themselves, and they're going to look for ways to start being like that and to growing that in themselves. So if we put those three things together, we can really grow a culture of grit in our schools. One warning I do have. As I've done a lot of research and I've noticed a lot of schools and organizations are taking on this grit culture and really trying to build this up within themselves. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's wonderful for our students to go to school in a place that really cares about grit and is teaching them about grit. I think we're forgetting one part of that in a lot of schools as they're building it. They're really focusing on the perseverance side of it. Now you got to remember grit comes down to two things, that passion and perseverance. And I think our schools are focusing way too much on the perseverance side, the no-quit attitude. And we're trying to build that in students without also providing them the passion. And that becomes a problem, obviously. There was one school I saw, they did a grit week. And they did their grit week over with their students on getting better high-stakes testing scores is what it essentially was. What kid's going to be passionate about that? What teacher is going to be passionate about that? You're not going to get kids to really persevere and to have that grit on something that they're not passionate about themselves. And maybe they're passionate for their teacher, so they try a little bit harder, but that's not grit. So I think that becomes an important thing to think about while building these cultures of grit. How do we build that passion in students? And I think that's hard to think about, especially in elementary school. Our kids should not probably graduate from elementary school passionate about something. The chances are very low that they will. What we can build in students is a knowledge base of interest in activities across all subjects. I think about it especially in mathematics. I know for me, I didn't like math from about 5th grade on. I thought I was dumb in math. I thought I wasn't good enough. I didn't understand the computation of the problems, or I wouldn't do all 80 of the computation problems, and I would get lost up in all the rules of math. Well, if I would have been shown a programming side of math or a robotics side of math and that coding, I think I would have been a lot more interested and maybe pursued something down that field. But from about that 5th, 6th grade on, I started just shutting math out, not wanting anything to do with it. So I think that becomes an important thing for us in schools. What can we do in our schools to make sure that we don't crush any of those interest base for kids? Whether it be math, reading, writing. How can we develop fun activities and interest-based for kids to see what they can do with those subjects later on in their lives that then they might be passionate about and build that grit then. So what we need to make school, I think, is this fun place for kids to learn, man, look at all this cool stuff you can do with math. Look at all this cool stuff you can do once you have those reading skills, once you have those writing skills. Look at everything you can create with all these skills. And then when kids later on in life start to realize what their passion is and focusing more and more on something, they can refer back to those skills that they developed in elementary school. And when they think back to elementary school, they don't have these horrified nightmares of what their math class was or what their reading class was. And instead, they're really excited about what they've learned, and they're excited about that knowledge base they already have. And then that builds that passion in themselves. So I think as we try to build those cultures of grit, we need to work on that perseverance with students across all grade levels, but we also need to make our lessons fun. We need to make our lessons interesting. We need to show the wide array of each subject and what it can be so that students have that knowledge base, that schema to fall back onto when they are ready to develop their passion. Again, those are just a couple of my thoughts on this book and how we might use it as a school. Remember, Grit by Angela Duckworth, totally worth a read. If you've already read it, think about going back and trying to pick up some of those other aspects of it, especially if you feel like you're focusing on one or the other with that passion and perseverance. So make sure to listen to the NSL podcast. Follow us on Twitter. Thank you for watching today.